Hey everybody, today I thought I would share with you a very different kind of video. This is way off of topic from what you normally see of me, but nonetheless, I feel it's very important and it's also very personal. So there might be some times where I might get a little emotional during this video, but I feel it's very important that I share this stuff with you. I don't normally share a lot about my personal life on my YouTube channel, but I thought it was very important that I did this. And I'm doing it for myself mainly, and anybody else who knew my dad. My dad, his name is Dennis Kupferschmidt. He was diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease. It was probably about 99 or 2000. He was about 49 when he was diagnosed, and for 16 years he fought the disease. And on January 21st of 2015, he lost his battle due to complications to ALS. And it's been a tough year, coping with it, dealing with it, processing with it. It's been very hard on my brother, my stepmom, my mom, and myself. But I felt it was very important to share this. And to give you a quick explanation of what ALS is, ALS, or Amyotrophic Lateral Sclerosis, is a progressive neurodegenerative disease that affects the nerve cells in the brain and the spinal cord. Motor neurons reach from the brain to the spinal cord, and from the spinal cord to the muscles throughout the body. The progressive degeneration of the motor neurons in ALS eventually leads to their demise. In short, what this does is it robs you of your movement, all of your voluntary stuff. You can't walk, you can't move your arms, your hands. Eventually, you can't speak, and it gets you to a point where you're completely immobile. Eventually, it starts to take effect of other things. And the most common cause of death for ALS patients is respiratory failure, usually pneumonia or something like that. Now, my dad was on a ventilator, so he managed to get 16 years from the time of his diagnosis to the time of his death. So he did pretty good. No small part, and a big thanks to my stepmom, who was his full-time caregiver, and she was amazing with him. Anyway, he lost his battle in January of last year, and we've had time to mourn and grieve and things, so I miss him. But anyway, the reason I'm talking about this is my family, particularly my dad and my stepmom, they have tried to raise awareness. They hosted the first Walk to Defeat ALS and were the chair people of the committee for this walk every year during the month of May, which is ALS Awareness Month. And they were trying to get a local chapter for the ALS Association. And it's not a very common disease, and there is no cure. They're still doing tons of research for it to find something, and I've seen where they're making small progressions in either slowing it or finding a way to bring it to a halt. Either way, there is no cure. You can only manage the symptoms and eventually the inevitable. So the point of all this is, when my dad died, he left a lot of stuff behind, and this is a peek into his personality, and partially mine too. Some of who he was and the kind of person he was, and what this disease did and what it took from his family and himself. Last week, my stepmom had invited my brother and I over to go through my dad's collection of things. And these were things that he'd collected over the years, because he had so many different interests and so many different things that he was into, and he collected stuff. That's just how it was, It's like with me with my guitars, and with my brother, it's the things that he does. But he definitely had an influence on the both of us. So today I want to share some of the things that he collected through the years, give you a peek into the kind of person he was and what he left behind. And it's going to be a trip down memory lane for me too. So I would like to state that a couple of things. Number one, I'm making this video for me. You feel free to watch, feel free to comment, like, whatever. But if it's something that you have a negative thing about, turn it off, walk away, whatever. I don't want to see any negative commentary. I don't want to see anything negative on this, because I'm not making this to entertain people. I'm making this for me. So if you're interested, please watch. I invite you to. If you're not, turn it off, go watch another video. I'll have my regular content back up soon, but I want to make that known. Secondly, and most importantly, this stuff is of sentimental value. I don't care what it's worth. I don't have any interest in knowing what it's worth or anything about it. None of this stuff is for sale. None of it. This is my dad's personal collection. These were the things that he enjoyed. And in his passing, my stepmom was generous enough to give it to my brother and I. So these are important to me. And I will not be selling any of it. So with those things out of the way, let's get started. Okay, so I have several boxes, and I think what I'm going to do, because this video is already getting kind of long just from my talking, I'm going to just do one box at a time and show off some of the stuff and talk a little bit about it. Might share a story or two. But I figure we'll do this one, and I'll probably do a few more videos like this. I'll label them as such and try to group them together in a playlist, so if you do want to watch them, you can continue to. If you don't, you can skip them. So here we go. Now, one thing about my dad, since early days on, and I mean when I was little, and I'm the oldest of two, he was always into motorcycles. As long as I can remember, he's been on a motorcycle. And as long as I can remember, I've been on a motorcycle. I grew up riding motorcycles with my dad. And eventually I've gotten one of my own, as did my brother. We both ride. We're both avid motorcyclists. So when he could no longer ride, he'd sold his motorcycle. And he collected die-cast models and things like that. So some of this stuff might be a little dusty because it's been sitting for a while, but that's not the point. So anyway, I have this die-cast Harley Davidson motorcycle set. These are the 100th anniversaries. These are the Heritage Softail Classic, the Fat Boy, and the Softail Deuce. And I don't know how well you can see those with the lights glaring and everything, but this has not been opened. This has been in the box the entire time. And I don't know who got those for him or when. I probably did. My brother probably did. One of his brothers probably did. But anyway, it was something we knew he liked. Another thing my dad was a fan of, and I don't know if I actually have any models of this or anything, but it's the only picture I have of it. My dad was an avid car guy. He loved his hot rods, but he was kind of unique in the fact that he liked American Motors cars. Not a Ford Chevy guy, anything like that. But he loved AMCs. And I think ever since I've known, he's always had an AMC up until I was a teenager. And even then, he still had one. But his main car was always an AMC until, like I said, later in my teens, he drove other cars, but he always had one as a hobby car, a toy, so to speak. And this is his pride and joy. That is a 1969 Hearst SC Rambler, otherwise known as the Scrambler. This car came stock with a 390 from the factory, V8. And the story goes, as much as I can remember, he bought the car probably when I was 16 or something like that, and he bought it from a guy who had bought it from the original owner, and the original owner blew the 390 in it, and he put a 360 AMC in it. Well, my dad took it home, cleaned up the motor, everything like that, and he drove it like that for a while. Well, he was able to get a hold of a new old stock AMC 401 engine block, and he built himself a monster of a motor. Now, these cars were extremely light, so putting a 400cc motor in it, or 400 cubic inch motor in it, with probably about 1-to-1 on the horsepower to cubic inch ratio, he could make that car scoot. It was really cool, and he did a really great job putting it back together. So he was very proud of this car, and when he was diagnosed and he could no longer drive it, he sold it. And I was hoping he would have sold it to my brother or me or somebody close to us or whatever, but he didn't want to see it driving around, so he sold it out of state. Understandable, but I sure do miss this car because it was really cool. But this is probably one of the only pictures I have of it. And yeah. He also was a fan of NASCAR. So I've got some of these die-cast cars here. He was a big fan of Mark Martin back when Mark Martin was racing. So he had tons of Mark Martin die-cast cars. He also was into Hot Wheels cars too. Now all of these have not been opened. These have all been you know, they stayed sealed. I got my love of Hot Wheels cars probably from him because I had a ton of them when I was a kid, and my boys have a ton of them too. The other big thing he was a fan of, and this is kind of funny, he was a Star Trek fan. He was a fan from the original series because, you know, he grew up watching that. Eventually the Next Generation, so on and so forth. So here we have a Captain Picard action figure, and it's from the Transporter series, so you can... I think the batteries are dead. Oh, or something. Oh, wait. And again, it's still sealed in the box, so he had a lot of that. I have a phaser. It's been taken out of the box, but I do have the box. And this is, I think, from the Next Generation also. And it does not appear to work. I think the batteries are dead, if it even has batteries in it. The original series, Star Trek Pez Dispenser collection. I have a Lieutenant Worf Transporter series action figure. And in this box I have, that was it for that. But in this box I also have more Hot Wheels cars. These were pretty standard ones. Now the bottom one is the original Batmobile, and I got that for him for Father's Day, I think it was, or his birthday or something like that, as part of another gift. I thought, or maybe I just picked it up, but I know I got it for him, and I thought it was really cool. And I thought he'd appreciate it too, because he actually had a full size or a larger scale Batmobile die-cast car. Another thing that my dad was also into was comic books. And so I've got the Flash still in the package, and I have a Johnny Lightning Spider-Man car here, die-cast car. He wasn't particular to Marvel, DC, whatever. He liked what he liked. And I can remember Batman, Superman, The Flash, all those. He's got a comic book collection somewhere, but we haven't found it yet. And I'm hoping to see what he has. So another die cast is the OCC American Choppers Comanche die cast chopper. This was featured on, I think, the first season or whatever. Well, he had this. Again, it's still in the box. a lot of this stuff he had gotten after he was ill. So I think, you know, family members and friends have gotten him these things over the years, and some of it he's probably collected himself before then. One thing I do remember, my dad, I don't have the bag in here because I thought that's what it was. But anyway, my dad was big into two things when I was probably about 14 or 15 years old. Number one, he was a huge fan of military aircraft. We got to a point, he and I, we could pretty much identify whatever military aircraft was at that time on site. We knew. We used to go to the air shows all the time and see all kinds of things and that kind of stuff. He actually has a cousin that was in the Air Force. He's retired now, but he flew in the Air Force. Well, probably in, 86, 87, something like that, 85, whatever, the movie Top Gun came out, and we'd probably seen that a million times, but he has a Top Gun hat. Another thing, I don't know if you can see this or not, but he collected pins of all kinds, hat pins or lapel pins, and I have quite a few of them. In fact, he has a jacket that is like an aviator style jacket, leather jacket, that he started putting pins on early on, and it got to a point where the whole jacket, the whole front of the jacket, sleeves, the front, the lapel, all of it, covered in these pins. This thing probably weighs about 50 plus pounds now. I'm supposed to be getting this jacket soon. I'm going to make a shadow box for it. I'm going to hang it and display it. I thought it was pretty neat. We had it at his funeral, and that was one of the memories that we had of all the pins that he collected through the years. And I'm actually kind of surprised I made it through this without shedding a tear. But anyway, these are some of the things that my dad had collected through the years, and I have plenty more boxes, so I'm going to probably make a few more videos. Some of the more obscure things that I've seen in his collection. He was a fan of the Thunderbirds TV show with the marionettes and that, so I have some collectibles from that. I've got more Star Trek stuff, more die-cast vehicles and figurines and things like that to show off. I got some books. So if you really like this, watch for the next video. I'll probably do it pretty soon. And if not, that's okay too, because I made this for me. And I have to stress once again, none of this stuff is for sale. So don't ask. I don't want to know how much it's worth. I don't care, because these are going to stay in my possession forever until I can pass them on to my kids, because these were my dad's things and they have more sentimental value than monetary value. So anyway, I appreciate you sticking with me this long. This is going to be a really long video, I know. Thank you. And if you guys like it, or you have a comment, or you want to know more about ALS, leave me a comment in the section. I will put a link for the ALS Association down in the comment section below. And thanks for watching.